but you don't tell them the day of. It'll destroy your marriage more than anything. Like, am I going to jail? You know, like, so like hiding in the bathrooms, nobody sees, like, Opie, like, what is this?
If Marc Benioff offered you $1 billion for ClickFunnels, what would you say?
Good question.
My question for you, before you get to the part about sacrifice, like, you know, to be Russell Brunson, right? To lead what you're leading and do what you're doing, writing the books, creating what you're creating, you know, the creativity, the constant, like, making sure that the ClickFunnels community stays fresh. What's the sacrifice that comes with that? That hurts, man. That's tough. That's heavy.
There's a lot. Like, it's interesting because I think most people see the positive. Like, people are like, oh, I wish I had ClickFunnels. That'd be the coolest thing. And it's like, yeah, but it's crazy because, like, as we've grown, like, man, there have been so many times where on the journey where each tier, as we get bigger, there's like more attacks that come from outside, from inside, from things like that, right? We're talking legal attacks. We have just a lot of stuff you don't think about that you have to start dealing with, right? And the bigger it gets, the more intensity that comes with that, and the more exposure and the more things that keep happening. And so, like, there are, I mean, tons of sleepless nights. I told you 2.5, 3 years ago, we hired, more lawyers, started going through all our stuff and looking at all the things, and now we have legal in-house counsel, because, like, for us, it's like, not only are we like our own marketing, we then have our affiliates who are marketing, and then we've got 120,000 customers who all are marketing. It's like, this like 2 or 3 years ago, one of the first times we got a lawsuit was from Taylor Swift. And I was like, we got a letter from Taylor Swift's lawyers. I'm like, what's going on? I'm opening up and it's like, you are being sued by Taylor Swift. I'm like, what's happening? I was like, yeah, I'm like, what did I do to Taylor Swift? I'm freaking out. Like, I don't even know what's happening. And it took us a while to figure it out. It's like, oh, some bozo who's using our platform is like illegally selling Taylor Swift stuff, but it looks like it's ClickFunnels because it's on our servers and our things. So, like, so I'm freaking out, like, and then later we get like letters from the FBI, like, and they come in certified mail, and it's like, Mr. Brunson, like, yeah, they sign this paper, like, you've been served, right? Like, I'm getting a letter, like, certified from the FBI. I'm like, am I going to jail? Like, so like hiding in the bathrooms, nobody sees, like, Opie, like, what is this? And it's like, oh, some moron on our platform is doing something stupid, and because they think it's us, it's like, oh, like, those things happen all the time. Or just people who are taking shots at us. Or we had one guy we helped be super successful, comes in the ClickFunnels groups, shows proof and stats of how much money he's made, all this stuff through our thing, huge testimonial. I'm like, dude, we changed this guy's life. This is amazing. Took a screenshot of it. Our team sees the screenshot, like, oh, this is cool. Like, in our folder of like success stories, grabs a screenshot, runs as an ad. Dude sues us for sharing a screenshot of his success story in our thing, end up settling for tens of thousands of dollars. Like, and that hasn't happened once. That's happened insane amounts of times. Really? Where now it's like, it's just the bigger you get, like again, people who you've helped attack you. People, like, you have employees who leave who now compete against you. Friends. One of my closest friends who like literally was down and out, needed money, wrote him a check for $100,000 to like help him survive his life. Like 2 years later, launches a competitor against us, talking trash about me. I was like, you were broke 2 years ago. I wrote you a check from my own pocket for you to survive as a friend, and now you're like on Facebook talking trash about me. It's just like,
yeah, anyway, that's the part people don't see.
And it's just like happening. Oh, like, it's just like some days you're just like, why? Anyway, one of my favorite books. There's a book called Atlas Shrugged, and I won't go deep into it because it's the greatest book of all time. But the principle of it is in the book, there's all these producers, right? The people that are moving the world, people like Atlas, holding the weight of the world on their shoulders, right? And what happens when the weight gets so heavy or things are so bad, the Atlas stops carrying and he shrugs, like, screw it, I'm out, and walks away. Not only me, but I feel like the people that I serve, entrepreneurs, are the producers. Like, we're the people holding the weight of the world on our shoulders. And it's like, I feel like we're getting attacked from government, from people, from policies, from every side we're getting attacked on. In the book, that's the whole premise of this book, is like, what happens when that comes to, and I don't want it to come to that. Like, that's not my goal, is to shrug and us all walk away. But I want to remember that, like we got to be careful, because in the book, some of the main characters, they don't get involved with, you talked about politics, like, they're not getting involved in these things, they're not doing stuff because, like, oh, I'm just going to focus on my thing, I'm not going to worry about it. But then it gets to the point where it's so bad that they eventually all have to walk away. And it's like, I want to make sure that doesn't happen, and it's kind of a reminder of that. Like, how do we how do we produce, but also in a way that can sustain what we're doing, right? Like, I love the world, I love the people, I love my life. I don't want those things to go away. So it's like, how do we play this game in a way that's going to make it be here for the long term? So I don't know, just inspires me when I think about that and making sure that we stay there.
I've always wanted to ask someone of your stature that's done as much as you have, impacted as much people as you have, and really built the business that you have. So I'm curious on your take on leadership, building a team, delegating, and your schedule, and how you go about scheduling your day and prioritizing what's important for you and as a business owner, and like what you delegate to your employees and their responsibilities as well. So leadership, delegating, and like scheduling.
A big part of it is understanding, at least for me personally, like I was trying to be a leader, trying to develop that, and but I wasn't like the best at it. And I think sometimes we think it's always got to be us, like it's my company, I got to be the CEO, I got to be the leader, I got to do these things. It's like understanding that a lot of times there's people who are really good, like who's the best you can find to be that, or any part of our business, you know what I mean, is a big part of it. Second thing is, if you've studied Dan Sullivan at all, one of his biggest things is unique ability. That's the thing. What's your unique ability? What's everybody's unique ability? And I think when you start a company, it's tough because it's like everyone's in charge of everything, right? Like I'm the CEO, but I'm also like taking out the garbage. I'm also doing that. Everyone's doing a little bit of everything, which is cool. Like when you're scrappy at the beginning, that's important, and everyone's doing that. But as you grow, that starts hindering you more and more and more. Where we had people who are insanely talented, who like if I could just get them doing this thing 100% of the time, and that's what I got to the point with in ClickFunnels is that like my unique abilities are writing, are being in videos, are building funnels, doing the marketing. Like those things are like my unique abilities. I was spending maybe 10% of my time on that and 90% of the time in meetings and trying to coordinate people and leadership, and it was stressful and it was
draining.
hard.
You were probably drained.
Yeah, and I was miserable. Like I was just like I wasn't good at it. Like that feeling where you're like, God, like I'm not getting through to people. I can't figure this out. But I felt like I had to own it. I had to be the guy. I had to do the thing because like this is my baby. This is my business. And the last 12 months has been crazy because I handed someone who actually is good at that. It is a unique ability, and I'm watching company structure and meetings and KPI, things that I was never super good at doing and consistently having all happening now. And now I'm in the marketing department again, and I'm building funnels. Like people are like, what do you do all day? I'm literally in ClickFunnels building funnels. Like no, like you have funnel build. Like no, like I'm literally in ClickFunnels building funnels. Like I didn't start this business because I wanted to be a CEO of a big, huge company. Like, I did it because I love building funnels. Like I'm an artist, and it comes down to like, this is my art.
Wow.
And that's what I gotta do now.
How do you develop the additional tolerance to be able to continuously like level up and continuously deal with those new challenges?
That's a good question. What came to my head is thinking, when I first started the business, it was me, right? And so, but as I started growing the business, you start getting teammates and people, and it starts growing. And now it's not, I think it's lighter for me because it's not just me either. It's an amazing group of people who I love and I respect, who are all fighting those things together now. That's made it so much easier for me. Where it used to be me sitting in my thoughts alone, like, oh, where now it's like, okay, I've got my team, I've got the people who are in this with me 100% through thick and thin, and I send a message to them, and like collectively together, it's like we take that, and it makes it so much easier not have to fight alone. So I think that's a big part. Is like getting to the spot where you're not just fighting yourself, you're fighting together with people. Because there's been issues, and just in the last few months I couldn't have handled by myself. Like no matter how tough I think I am, I look at Dave and Todd and Dan and like the guys on my team who are my close partners and stuff, that because of them, like we're able to do stuff that's some days is ridiculous. We're like, this is crazy. This is.
Yeah, man. What is it that they do that has earned your trust as a leader, as somebody who, I'm sure there's so many people that want to be in your inner circle, but how them? How did you know to trust them?
I'll start with Dan. So Dan's on the camera right now. So Dan came into my world like a week before the first Funnel Hacking Live. I saw some of his work and I was like, oh my gosh. I sent him an email like, dude, come Funnel Hacking Live. He's like, what am I doing? I'm like, just bring your magic. Do it like that thing you do, just do that. Like no direction, no instruction, no nothing. He comes to the event. I don't even see him the whole time. He's running around doing a million things. And then like a couple months later, he's like, here's the video from Funnel Hacking Live. And we watched it, and I was like, I gave him no direction, no instruction, like nothing. And it came back, and it was the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And I was like, huh. And so then fast forward next year's Funnel Hacking Live, like, do you want to do that again? Like, he's like, yeah, we want different. I'm like, just do this same thing you did, just do that again, right?
That's actually powerful.
Yeah, and did that 2 or 3 times, and then got closer and closer, and eventually became a partner. And inside of ClickFunnels, we brought him in as a full partner. But he's someone who like doesn't need direction, super creative, but he comes like all the time as a servant. Like just here, he serves, he gives, he like shows up, does more than you ask him. Like just
You talk about the extra mile. He embodies that message or that.
It is insane. Like every year, like there's no way you can make it better. And then this year, he sent the thing, and I was like,
It's better.
speechless. And we watched it like 20 times in a row. I probably watched this year's, I'd say conservatively 100 times. Every time I'm like getting tired, I just push play again. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, for anybody watching this that is an employee, rewind and really listen to how he talked about Dan, because that's what we all dream of. You know, I remember Kobe Bryant, he said the number one thing he looks for when he's hiring is obsessives. Mm-hmm. Bridger, what was your question, buddy?
Yeah, so you're talking about how at each level of success that you hit, some of your mentors hit that ceiling, right? Because the posturing, right? And so ultimately, I feel like when you get to a new level of success, it requires you to like upgrade your identity, right? Your self-image. And so what have you found is the number one like routine, or what's your process for upgrading the identity, upgrading your self-image? Because I think that's so important, because it can either hold you back and have you self-sabotage and not take action and go after what you want, or, you know, it's going to be the thing that keeps you at that level and continues to propel you forward.
It's weaved through everything. Like, and the one that's the most obvious external, especially in our world, is because you see business, like marketers, like most people when they first start selling whatever they're selling, like they're bragging about themselves, right? Like, here's my abs, here's how much money I made, here's like it's all about them. Like that's like the first tier of it, and then the second tier, like when they start having the realization, I feel like, is when they stop talking about themselves and start talking about the people they've helped. You see externally, it's like now it's no longer am I talking about, like you don't hear me talking about how much money I make, but I talk about all the other people, right? It's like that's the next tier is that, and then for me, like the third tier now, which has been really cool, is like talking about, like we talked about Lady Boss, right? Like it wasn't me, then it was Kaylin, but now like the success stories of Kaylin is Kaylin's customers, right? And so it's like that next tier of like of what you're talking about is like the external version of that. So there's a lot of internal things that you got to deal with, but it's like you'll notice it shifting in people when you look at just their messaging, what they're saying, from the way they podcast, they video, they market, their ads and everything. It's like this shift of like, it's not about me, it's about them. And it's not even about them, it's about, like that's the external version of it. I had this really successful guy I met one time who, when he first met me, he's like, tell me your story. So I was telling him my, the Russell posturing story about how great I was. And he's like, no, he's like, no, tell me about like the time you failed. And I was like, he's like, no, like, so I was like, well, I'm in the middle of one right now. So I told him, like, let me tell you, So I told him this whole, like, the whole thing. And I remember afterwards, I was like so embarrassed and just like, he's gonna think I'm an idiot. Like, just, that fear. He's like, good, you cycled. I'm like, what? He's like, I will not work with entrepreneurs who haven't cycled at least once. He's like, because if they haven't, they still believe their own bio, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, is just like, is the internal version is the first time around or whatever, before you cycled, you think it's all you. Like, I know for me it was, like, I remember doing this the first time, like, I am a genius, like, I'm the smartest guy in the world, And then when it collapsed, I was like, there's a lot of things outside of my control. This is not me. There's a team, there's God, there's all these other things that are making this possible. And there's a scripture, I can't remember where it's at, it's the Bible, Book of Mormon, but it says like, you can either be humble or God will I'm misquoting it by far, but it's like, God will have humble people, or you can be humble or he'll humble you. So it's like, looking at that, I'm like, okay, round 2, I'm gonna be a humble person because I don't want to be humbled again, right? So it's like,
still feel this.
So it's like, this is not me, and I understand that now. Like, I look around now, it's like, there's no way I would be where I'm at right now if Dan Usher didn't make videos the way he does. There's no way I'd be right now if Todd Dickerson could not code software the way he does. There's no way it could happen without that.
Two big things that I heard from you amongst your story. You were talking about this positivity, like when you would experience something or you learn something, you're so excited about it, you're so positive. But then there's this other part of you that's very vulnerable. And so you experience anxiety, or you have challenging days, or you're discouraged. How do you find the balance between those of being vulnerable and being honest with how you're feeling versus, hey, this is a challenge, I'm an entrepreneur, I can overcome this. Yeah. What's the balance?
There's 3 or 4 things that I got from Tony the very first time I went to his event and I heard him speak that had a huge impact on me. One of the biggest ones was state control, like understanding that. Have you heard him talk about the triad and things like that?
Yeah.
like I'd never heard that before. And I remember watching him do these things on people in the audience, and it was just like, it was fascinating. He took a lady who was a suicidal, he picked someone in the audience who was suicidal. And he's like, it was the weirdest thing. He talked about the triad, right? There's three things that change your state, right? There's your language, there's your focus, and there's your physiology, right? So he takes someone, he's like, I need somebody who's suicidal. He takes this beautiful girl. I remember, we're up in Toronto at this event, and he takes this girl, and he's like, I need you to get depressed. Like, not like a little bit depressed, like clinically, like suicidal. He's like, what? He's like, get there in your mind, like whatever it takes, get dark. And you see her, like her state change, right? And he keeps pushing her, and gets her to this point. And anyway, it's crazy. I'm watching this, and I'm kind of freaking out because I'm watching him do this to this girl, getting her point, and soon she's bawling her eyes out and everything. And he's like, you gotta get deeper, get darker, more miserable, like all this stuff. And you see him change this girl's state, and all of us want to stop. And finally, it seemed like forever. Finally stops. And he's like, everyone, look at her, watch her, like look at this. He's like, what do you notice? What's her physiology? You see her body, you see tears and all this stuff, and you see her just broken. And he's like, what do you say? He goes through the whole triad and with her, and he like shows that. And he's like, now I want to show you how quick we can shift this. To the point where it's like, anyway, it was crazy. And then he shifts it, and he starts taking her back through, like shifting the physiology, shifting her shoulders, shifting her things, shifting her meetings, shifting focus, shifting what she's saying. And he gets this girl within 3 or 4 minutes to literal like ecstasy. Like, it was crazy watching this. And you see her where she's laughing and crying, like the opposite side of it. And I'd never seen something like that, like the flip of emotions, how easy it was by just shifting these 3 things in her. And it had such a profound impact on me. If not maybe the one I saw, but he does it every UPW. I'm sure there's YouTube videos of it as well. But if you type the triad, I think it calls it the triad or state control, things like that, you see it happen. But I saw that and I was just like, oh my gosh, like I never realized that we had control over that. I thought my feelings were my feelings. Like, here's your feeling, like, okay, crap, this is the feeling I have today. And like after experiencing that, I was like, I could actually change this. I didn't know that. And it's interesting because I think sometimes when we're depressed or we're sad or we have these things, like, I think someone's like it. Like, I've had times before, like, I don't want to be happy. Like, I'm enjoying feeling miserable. And sometimes I sit in there because I enjoy it, because like we do, it's weird, it's messed up. But I feel that I'm like, this is, like, I could change this, but I don't want to. But other times I'm like, I have to change it. It's crazy you can shift your state and you can do that and show up the way you need to be. Your feelings are weird, that are gonna show up in one way or the other, but the fact that you can control them, which I didn't understand or know how, but as soon as I realized that, it's just like, I don't have to be sad or miserable or anxious, whatever. I can actually change those things in a moment if I understand how. And that was like one of the greatest gifts Tony gave me, was just understanding how to do that and seeing it in practical application with somebody. And now it's like, I can do it myself anytime I need to, if I need to.
Ask you a question outside of business.
Yeah. You guys got a question?
Yeah, I have a question. So you talked about, I remember you were talking about your wife earlier. Me and my fiance actually met at ClickFunnels at your event.
Yeah.
So
ClickFunnels wedding.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about is,
Might be the best man of the wedding.
I told him. It's
gonna be in Costa Rica.
Nice.
So what I want to ask you is, what is your secret to like a really successful marriage that's worked for you? I think that's something that many entrepreneurs have good marriages, they don't really get asked about. So I was just curious about that.
Throughout history and society, the way that most of us get things done is, so in any relationship, there's a power player and there's someone less, right? It's like, if I want my wife to do something, I'm going to demand, like, I need you to do these things, right? And that works until the other person has the ability to leave. So prior to divorce being a thing, men throughout history have had a dominant relationship over women. They use demand relationship to get what they want, and women couldn't leave, and so it was a horrible thing, right? But they couldn't leave. As soon as divorce happened, boom, it started happening, right? When parents come over to their kids and give demand relationship, as soon as the kids are able to leave, it breaks these relationships. And so that's the problem, is that, for the last 5,000 years, that's been our DNA, that men force women to do these different things. And that's the demand relationship is. Their whole training, their whole course, everything they teach is the opposite of demand relationship. Like, how do you create a relationship where transformation happens through inspiration, not through demanding and like change things? So it's tough, because for all of us, like especially men, like it's been so ingrained in our DNA that if we want something, it's how we do business, how we do things. But in relationships, especially an intimate relationship, it's the worst thing that possibly happened to you. And then the other thing is, it's like, you have to understand like what your values are. I learned from Tom Bilyeu at a level that was fascinating recently. So it's figuring out for yourself, like, what are your values personally, with your family, with everything like that, and you define them, and then it's like, there's no question. Like, that's what's hard, is when you value something here and your spouse values something differently, and the conflict of that is what causes the fights, right? But if you get on the same page, like, look, this is number one, two, you have these things, then it makes it easier to navigate those things. It's like, no, I understand, like this is one of the values we have as together as a couple, like you should go do that thing or whatever the thing might be. So like when we were building ClickFunnels and stuff, it was hard at first because she didn't really understand, like, she's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you spent all this time and didn't understand it. And it was tough because I was trying to explain it, but it wasn't until the very first Funnel Hacking Live where, because my wife had never been to one of my events before, anything we'd really, she knew kind of what we did, but not really. And she came to Funnel Hacking Live, the very first one, and she didn't come down at first because she didn't realize what's happening. She was like, doing some stuff, and then she came down with one of her friends and walked in the back of the room and saw the stuff, and she started just crying. She was like, oh, this is what you're, like, I had no idea this is what was happening and and then it became real for her. And like, that was such a huge blessing for me because now, when next time it's like, we have to work hard for this or we're planning for or whatever, she was able to see like, this is the fruits of it, like, oh, that's why you're doing it. And now if you notice, my wife's every Funnel Hacking Live, front row. She doesn't understand a word we're saying, but she's there, she's paying attention because she's like, look at all these people and the lives they're changing and impacting. Now it's different where like, when I gotta do work late nights or whatever, she sees the vision and she's on board with it, so it makes it so much easier. The other secret I learned is if I tell her, if it's like 5 o'clock at night, I'm like, crap, I got to stay late tonight, and I call it 5 o'clock at night, nothing good can come from that. It's better for you just to like go home, right? If I know it's like Wednesday night, I'm gonna be working late, I tell her Monday, like, hey, Wednesday night, there's a good chance I'm gonna be late. And then if I tell her, she's totally cool with it, right? But you don't tell them the day of. It'll destroy your marriage more than anything.
It's good wisdom.
The other secret, this secret don't put on camera. I don't want my wife to.
Is that right?
Okay, so we start having kids at the same time I start this business, right? And so I'm traveling, I'm going to events, and she's at home with the kids. And so we never traveled before, so I'm going on these vacations, I'm meeting these cool people, I'm in hotel rooms. So every time I'm getting back, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, okay, I met so-and-so, and then all these things, I'm so excited, like so like pumped about all the things I'm telling her about stuff. And she's at home with twin babies, miserable, tired, horrible, feet hurt, body hurt, and I'm out having the time of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking she's gonna be pumped for me, right?
Right.
No. And for like probably a year or so, I was just like, and then one day I remember I'm at some event and I get like cornered by people on an introvert to Russell's like anxiety, and it was horrible, and some guy cornered in the bathroom and is like asking me questions while I'm peeing. And it wasn't even like, most of the time they fake pee next to you, so at least like not awkward. You stood next to me like watching me pee. I'm like, can you at least fake pee? And so it was so bad. And I got home that night and I called her on the phone and I was just like, it was horrible. I went off how horrible it was and all the miserable. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And like, but then she was like, cool. It was awesome. And I was like, I didn't get in trouble. And so the next time I went out, I was like, I got home that night, I called her, I was like, oh, it was horrible. My feet hurt, my back hurt. I was like, they want to hear the stories, not in the moment. Like later she wants to hear, but not in the moment. Because it's just like, anyway, so marriage is one of the hardest things, but one of the most like rewarding things at the same time. So it's worth it, but it's a ride. Go through demand relationship, man.
That's a great
so good.
If Marc Benioff offered you $1 billion for ClickFunnels, what would you say?
Good question.
I'd ask him for 5.
Good response.